Eiffel Tower listeners, it is me, Oliver G., your host in this show that's all about Paris and indeed France. Yes, sometimes we go outside the périphérique and tell some stories from around this beautiful country. Today, no exception. You're going to hear the voice of Jane Webster. If you think that's an Australian accent, if you think that's two Australian accents, you're exactly right. Jane is from Melbourne. We've been back and forthing for years, hoping to catch each other either in Normandy, where her beautiful chateau is, or in Paris, but it just never really happened until this very episode. Lovely woman. I highly recommend that you check out pictures of her chateau, Chateau de Boscouet, which is in Normandy, sort of between France and the if you were to head northwards. Before you get to the sea, about halfway there, you'll find her chateau. But look up that website to get a sort of an idea of the grandeur that we're talking about here. thefrenchtable.com.au, and there you can also find information about her past books, 4 books. Now, before we get into it, just so you can feel that you're here in Paris with us, I recorded this right by the Opera House, in a restaurant called the Coco Opera Garnier. Beautiful interior. Staff not so friendly, at least not the ones that I met, but I'm not going to go on about it because it was lovely to be in the company of Jane, and that's what this is all about. So, talking about chateau life, living in the countryside of France, and a lot more, including lockdown. What's lockdown like when you live in a chateau that has 72 rooms and there's no one but you and your husband? Enjoy the episode. I'll talk to you again at the end with a little bit of sort of personal news and emails and stories like that. But for now, it's Jane Webster. A big thanks to the Patreon supporters who make this show possible. Patreon.com/The Eiffel Tower. Now, let's get into it. Jane Webster.
Hello, Oliver.
Look how bright you just lit up there. You must be. How many coffees have you had?
That was the second one.
That was the second.
But I haven't actually had a coffee this was my first Monday back in Paris since this pandemic started.
So that's, what, 4 months then?
Yeah, 4 months.
Wow. But you're usually in here every Monday?
Every single Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, come in for book club every Monday.
Right. So what's the biggest change you've noticed?
I just found today that the streets were empty.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit eerie. It's July and there's no tourists. Usually I wouldn't even be coming to book club in July because I would have guests out at the chateau and I don't have them.
Right.
So, this was my first Monday back.
Right.
Just a little bit eerie walking through the streets.
Did you and we'll talk about the chateau in depth in a second, but do you follow a lot of Paris accounts? So did you keep an eye on how weird it was 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Frightening.
Yeah, really frightening.
Actually frightening as well.
Yeah.
So we're sitting, for everyone at home, we're sitting next to the opera.
Yeah.
And I live about 1 kilometre from here.
Oh, that was good. Did you walk here?
I got very close to it, but when I say frightening, I was actually frightened when we came this far because I was on the edge of my...
comfort zone.
Well, we couldn't legally walk any further during the thick of it, right?
That is exactly what I was about to say to you. So I got off the train at St. Lazare this morning, and then I walked over to the second to check out one of the covered passages.
Oh, yeah. Which one? Colbert, maybe?
No, not Colbert.
I can't remember.
Too many. Anyway, it's not a particularly good one. It doesn't have good light.
Oh, forget it then.
It's the longest one in Paris.
Sure.
But it's a bit... I don't know that it's worth the walk.
Okay.
But I was texting with a friend and she said, "What's it like?" And I said, "Well, I'll take a little video for you."
Yeah.
I said, "It's weird.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary. I'd actually feel a bit weird being here today, almost as if I shouldn't have come in."
How interesting. And today is, incidentally, the day we're recording is the day that they've passed the new law that you have to wear masks everywhere that's inside, or you risk €135 fine.
Yeah.
Which is about $100 and something dollars.
Close enough to $200
in Australia.
Yeah.
Who knows what it is in American dollars?
Oh, American dollars, it's about 140, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You're more on the ball of that stuff than I am. But you're a fellow Australian as well.
I am.
From Melbourne?
I'm from Melbourne, born and bred.
Born and bred. Let's talk about that a little bit. How, why don't we do your story, but like the fast forward version?
Okay.
You're an Australian in France, but in a chateau. How on earth? What? How did this happen?
In a nutshell.
Yeah, the nutshell version. 'Cause I've got so much more I want to talk
Pete and I got married in 1990. And we were in Paris, and we'd been here for 2 weeks on our honeymoon. And we got on a train on a TGV, and we were speeding down to Dijon. And my nose was pressed against the window of the TGV.
All right.
And I could see something coming up in the distance, and it was two very, very formal lines of what I now know were linden trees.
Oh, yes.
And I said to Pete, there's something really nice coming up, and I gave him a nudge, and he was pressed against the window, and as we sped past, we saw a Napoleon III chateau at the end of the two lines of linden trees, and that was it. We were hooked.
You were hooked on chateaus? Or...
Well, it was the first chateau we'd ever seen.
Right.
And back in Melbourne, we had been renovating houses, so we'd been buying old Victorian houses mainly.
And you don't have chateaus in Melbourne, do you?
Oh, no. But we were used to doing renovations, and when we got back from the honeymoon, he bought me this book called The French Chateau, and it sat on my bedside table for years. And then the internet came into our lives, and the whole world became so accessible. And in the meantime, my sister had married a Belge and moved to Paris because he was the head of a bank here.
Right.
And so we had this familial duty to visit on an annual basis.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
You know about
that?
The familial duty.
I'm experiencing it from the other side.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so we were here all the time. And to get out of my sister's hair, who was in Chateau. Do you know where Chateau is? It's a western suburb just near Versailles.
Okay.
Le Visenay, on your way to Saint-Germain-en-Laye. To get out of her hair, we would go off into the countryside. And when the internet came into our lives, I made rendezvous with real estate agents to have a look at chateaus.
Cool.
As a bit of fun.
Right.
Really as a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But after the first rendezvous, we both looked at each other, and Pete said, "We're in trouble, aren't we?" And I said, "Yeah, I think we're in trouble."
You got hooked?
Yeah.
I feel like you've got a tendency to get hooked to things.
I do.
Yeah.
I don't think I should ever gamble because I think I've got an addictive personality.
Yeah, don't try hard drugs either.
I have never.
Good. Good.
No, I do recognise that in myself.
Wow.
It's not a good idea.
But that's, so you started seeing chateaus around France.
Yep.
The linden tree set it off.
It did.
And then you ended up in Normandy at what can only be described as an absolutely stunning piece of chateau. I say piece of it, it's just a chateau, isn't it? It's huge.
Yeah.
So how do you describe it to someone in listener land?
Well, it sits on 50 acres. It's 5 stories. It's Napoleon III, so that very beautiful, formal, symmetrical. I always say to people, if they don't know what Napoleon III is, think Madeline. You know Madeline, the storybook. It's got the mansard roof. It's got the big French windows. It's got the tall, airy rooms with the Versailles parquetry floors. It's got that flow through. You'll have to come, Oliver.
I was just picturing myself.
Bring your bride and come and have a weekend with us.
Is she still my bride after 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it still counts.
I should hope so.
Yeah, is that
you should still be filling the jar, not emptying it.
Oh, okay, I love that. Okay, so when you say Napoleon III, what year are we talking here?
And we're talking 1843.
Of course, I knew chateau. That was the. Of course, I knew Napoleon III was 1840 something.
Well, it's a much broader period than that. But the chateau was built in 1843.
Okay, wow. And so you. This nutshell, I fear I'm stoking and making it bigger, but you bought that one and you've been renovating it. It's not completed renovating.
It is never.
Yeah.
We've got outbuildings, and will we ever get all of them done? Probably not, but our children might, or our grandchildren might, if it's kept in the family.
What's the surprising thing that takes more time than you'd think to upkeep in the chateau?
Look, I think probably the biggest upkeep is the garden. We have a 1 acre walled potager garden, and that takes up an enormous amount of effort.
What does that mean, potager?
A vegetable garden.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, that's a big vegetable garden.
It is. It's a big vegetable garden.
What's your main veg?
Oh, what have we got in at the moment? We've got courgettes, we've got cabbages, we've got carrots, we've got tomatoes,
So how much?
lettuces.
I'm trying to picture a 1 acre vegetable garden.
It'd be the size of this terrace.
That is
By
enormous.
3.
Okay, so we're talking by 3.
Yeah, by 3 of this.
3 of these terrae.
Yeah.
So we're talking.
Yeah.
So that's like 3 basketball courts, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So how many courgettes have you got there?
We've kept the supply to a limit this year because we have no guests. It's just Pete and I.
right.
And usually we have staff there as well, and everyone gets fed.
Wow.
But there's only 2 of us.
That's so crazy.
And even with the smaller amount that we've planted, we're filling baskets and taking them to friends whenever we go
That's
to
so
visit.
lovely. Like if you come to a party or something, you just come with
you bring
fruits and vegetables. Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Okay. So to get a chateau like that, do people sort of say, well, you must be a billionaire?
Look, you can go online, you can look at chateaus, and you might find things that you think, oh, that's so reasonable. You know, that's a 1-bedroom apartment in London, or that's a 1-bedroom apartment in New York.
Yeah.
If it's cheap, there's usually a reason. You know, it might be next to an autoroute, or next to Déchetterie, or the Tip.
The Tip, yeah.
There might be an issue, but you certainly do in France get a lot more bang for your buck.
Yeah. I love those stories that you see in the newspaper sometimes that say, here's what you can buy in France for the price of a whatever.
And people love it, and of course, you know, that sells papers.
Yeah.
But there's generally a reason if it's too cheap.
And is it, I mean, we have a mutual friend, I believe, Julie from French Manoir, who's been on this very show. I was in her very chateau a while back. Is it, I think she said this, but I'm confirming what she said. Is it true that all you chateau owners know each other?
We do.
Yeah.
Julie bought her chateau because she read my first book.
Ah, how cool.
Yeah.
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 So-
Well, that's what she's told me.
Yeah. So let's talk about your first book, which was a huge success. Tens and tens and tens of thousands of them sold, as I understand.
At My French Table.
At My French Table. Beautiful book.
Yeah, really beautiful book.
To people, how long ago was that published?
That was published in 2007.
Right, and still going strong. People still talk about it?
Still going strong, but it's out of print with Penguin Random House. So I'm about to, as we were discussing, print some. The rights have been returned to me. So we're just going through the process at the moment of deciding which way to go. Do we just leave it exactly as it is, or do we add some new chapters?
That's kind of
which
cool.
we thought would be really fun for our kids, because they're all in their 20s now. And they came here as 11, 10, 9 and 3.
That's nice.
So, and they have a story to tell. So we thought that'd be a bit of fun. But, you know, we've got to get that organised.
Yeah, and that takes up a lot of your time, like writing and sort of working on writing with other people and stuff like that.
Yeah, I also do a 500 word a day, which started at the start of the pandemic with a girlfriend down in Tangier.
Yeah. That's kind of a romantic sentence.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah,
It's like a Bob Dylan
500
song,
words a day.
With a girlfriend in Tangier.
With a girlfriend in Tangier. And she and I wrote a little ebook that to try and encourage people to also do this 500 words a day. It's essentially a pen pal. It's essentially journaling with a pen pal, which makes you have less chance of giving up on your journaling because someone's relying every day on the 500 words
So you
coming
send
in.
it to each other? Is that
Every day. Never missed a day.
Yeah. Is she a good writer?
Oh, she's a beautiful writer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes it easier then.
She left Australia to become a writer full time.
But you, speaking of Australian writers, you must have, what you're doing is living someone's dream. Is it your dream as well? Living in a chateau in Normandy and writing for a living?
Yeah, it absolutely is my dream. But I did realise yesterday afternoon, I had a lunch yesterday, a Sunday lunch, and I have found this lockdown and this whole period in our history very difficult. for a number of reasons. You know, you're in this great big house. One girlfriend said to me the other day, "Oh, you in your splendid isolation." And she said, and I shouldn't say that because I know you still feel very isolated, and all my kids are overseas, you know, 3 in Australia and 1 in the UK. So it's just Pete and I thumping around in this big old house, which is, I know we're lucky to have the space, but I've found it really difficult. Yesterday we had friends for lunch, and I said at the end of the lunch as we were waving them goodbye, "Oh, thank goodness, I've found my purpose again." My purpose is to dress a table, cook something beautiful, and have friends around, and have guests, entertain. It's what I love doing.
Yeah.
And, that's what I do for my work, whether it's French Table or the Chateau Life Residency, or, you know, I do some workshops in Paris as well called Follow Your Dreams, where I work with people on following their dreams.
Sure, yeah.
And it's all essentially meeting people and, you know, hosting and...
That's nice.
And for some reason, in the last 4 months, I'd forgotten that because it wasn't in my face and I wasn't doing it every day. But
it's weird to be. I mean, it's weird to be. I think the pandemic in France, because that's mostly where I know people at the moment in my life. But everyone sort of reacted very differently to it. There are some people who really struggled through it in the city. Some people who left the city and struggled out there. A lot of people are sort of changing their habits based on it. I can't imagine. It must have been. Talk me through being alone in an enormous place. Is it kind of like, you know, scary or?
It wasn't scary.
It's not haunted.
It wasn't. No, no, not at all. It wasn't scary. It was. Oliver, I have been so busy all my life. Even for the 12 years that I was at home with 4 children, you know, I had 4 children and a house, and I never had a cleaner. I always did my own cleaning and cooking and washing, and, you know, so I wasn't just playing tennis and having coffee every day. And I've just never felt so... I actually felt worthless.
Wow.
I couldn't get a grip on what it was I was supposed to do. So it should have been a great time to do something wonderful, but I didn't do anything wonderful.
That was the thing. Like from what I saw online, is some people really went in to cope, maybe working really hard, and some people did the opposite. And I think everyone just found their own way through it. There's definitely no right or wrong way to do it. But it was kind of interesting to see how everybody.
I think I worked on me.
Yeah.
I said...
The most important renovation.
Well, I really dug deep.
Yeah.
And I said to a friend who rang me this morning as I was walking around the streets in Paris, you know, I said to her what I just said to you about the yesterday and finding my purpose again. And I said, I'm back. I actually feel like, oh, right, I can take a deep breath and I know what I have to do now. But, you know, just, I did a lot of soul searching. Yeah.
Well, here we are, though, now, in Paris. Things feel like they're getting back to normal.
Yeah.
Does it feel weird to be in Paris as essentially a country girl?
Yeah. I come to the big city every Monday morning.
Yeah.
And...
do you feel out of place when you come here, in that you're quite used to living in the countryside?
No.
No?
I drive to the station, leave the car at the station, get on the train and come in. And, you know, have my little routine, and it's different at the moment because our usual book club spot is closed until the start of September. But that's all right. We've changed it up a little bit, and we're having book club lunches instead.
Yeah, that's
so
nice. We'll
do a different terrace every Monday until the Crillon opens again.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Shame we're not at the Crillon. I feel like that would be a nicer, as lovely as this place is.
Yeah. The Crillon, you know, is a 6-star palace, and you could not, the kids that work there, treat you like family.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's so beautiful.
Oh,
So
nice.
you know, they'll chat to you, and it's all very down to earth, and you know,
Yeah.
a little bit stuffy here.
It is a little bit stuffy. We won't name names,
No, we
but
won't
it's a
name
little bit
names.
stuffy.
Yeah.
But let's talk about life in, I say the countryside. You're
Yep.
in Normandy.
Normandy.
Can we...
Yeah, we're about 20 k's from Rouen,
Right.
which is the capital of Normandy.
Yeah.
We sit on 50 acres. We're very close to, you know, so our sort of, you know, we're 40 minutes from Giverny, we're 12 minutes from Rouen, we're half an hour from Honfleur and
Cool.
Deville.
Right. Right in the
Fantastic.
middle there,
Yeah, it's a really good spot.
Nice.
Really good spot for
But
visiting.
when you live in such a big place like that, do you find yourself getting out to the local... I mean, you wouldn't need the fruit markets, I mean.
But I love the markets
Yeah.
anyway, and particularly brocants. I love finding a bargain at a brocante. So, you know, Friday mornings, I have a favourite brocante that I love to go to.
Is it every okay.
every Friday morning, and it's a true flea market
Right.
with stuff thrown all over the ground,
Yeah.
with real treasures.
And is that how you decorated the chateau?
Well, we bought 2 40-foot containers worth of stuff with us from Australia.
Right.
And then we... And that sort of didn't even touch the sides in, you know, a 72-room chateau.
It's 72 rooms, goodness me.
That's every room. You know, that's
That's including...
bathrooms.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, how many bathrooms are there? To the nearest 5.
14 or
That's
16
incredible.
bathrooms.
Wow. I was actually at the Palace of Versailles yesterday. Yeah. So I'm kind of in this mood at the moment. It's nice that we're sitting at Opera and we're talking about all this.
Yes.
I feel like there should be
It would have been a
Mozart.
beautiful day at
was
Versailles
lovely. It
yesterday.
was
Were
lovely.
you by the Grand Canal out
Yep.
in the garden
Yeah,
having
we
a
went for
picnic?
big walk. Yep, did the whole
Perfect.
thing. Did the full...
I just talked to the book club ladies and said, what about in a few weeks we do a book club at 10 a.m. at the Trianon Palace, which is that beautiful hotel just off the park.
Yep.
And then we'll walk through the garden to the
Nice
Grand
idea.
Canal and all bring a little picnic lunch and
It's
sit
a
by the
really
Grand
good idea.
Canal.
Your book club is better than mine because mine's all online. And
Right.
yours you go to nice places like that. Maybe I'll have to take a leaf out of your book.
Oh, well, you know what you should do maybe is come to book club. We could tee up for a book club for 1 month on a book.
Yeah.
And then you could come to book club and we could do sort of a little you could have a little audio of book club
Oh, that could be
in
fun.
situ.
Oh, goodness me, that sounds like a fun idea. Yeah.
That'd be
Why
fun,
not?
wouldn't
Let's
it?
do it. Let's talk
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, cool. That's
That'd be
something to look
fun.
forward to.
That'd be really fun.
That's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk. It's time, and I know you've got to get out of here soon, but we can sort of wind things up on a little bit more on chateau life.
Yes.
Are there unexpected difficulties with living in a chateau and running it?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Things go wrong all the time. But there's lots of joy as well. You know, the electricity goes out. Which box do you go to? There's about 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a storm and part of the roof comes off.
Yeah.
You open a window because it's a hot night and a bat flies in. I mean, you know, it's endless.
Yeah.
What can happen, but it's just part and parcel of living in the countryside, I guess.
So what are the joys of a place like that?
The joys are waking up to the bird song. You know, one of my greatest joys still is, and before we bought the chateau, I dreamt about it for months beforehand, was waking up in the morning and opening those French windows and letting that breeze come through. Walks and the views. When you come, you'll see, you know, we've got this magical back terrace with this just beautiful view. I call it the patchwork quilt, you know.
Lovely.
Last month it was all the linseed, so we had purple fields, and before that it was the yellow. What's the yellow? The flax. I think the flax.
Sure.
And the corn, and you know, and so you get these, you know, different shades of green, and then you get a whole field of blue and a whole field of yellow, and
What a treat.
it's a really lovely, authentic immersion into French country life. It's beautiful, and that's what Chateau Life residency is all about, is 12 people per month, which should have started this year, but now will start next year. Well, we still have people booked in for October this year, so we'll see. But they're Australians and Americans, so I'm not holding my breath.
The less we say about that, the better.
Yeah. So 12 people per month will come and live at the chateau for 1 month.
How cool.
And so the chateau is, let's call that the big market umbrella. And then underneath that market umbrella are all these other little artisanal people. So you met Ariana before. So she's a fashion design student doing a Masters of Fashion, but she also teaches fashion sketching. So she might come in and do a little workshop. A French teacher's coming in 3 days a week to give French lessons. My daughter is a sourdough expert. She's coming in to do sourdough classes.
Sourdough's hot right now as well.
Huge.
Yeah, she's in the right line of
business. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
so people come out and spend a month there and
spend a month, get a newsletter with a whole plethora of things that they can do every single day. Or they can sit under a linden tree and read a book.
Those linden trees. Is linden the same as like lime, but not
yes.
the... Yeah, it's
the lime tree.
Yeah, funny, because in my book, I researched... There's a chateau I visited in Burgundy, and when I looked up the trees to get in there, there were lime trees. I was like, but
lime.
they don't have a lime one.
It's a linden.
Yeah, linden.
Yeah.
It's just by chance the same word, right?
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, let's finish with a last question. I think we can keep it short. But Paris, what's your favourite thing about this place?
Oh gosh, where do I start? Look, it is probably still where I began in Paris, which was in 1990 on our honeymoon, over in the 6th. And I know it's very busy over there nowadays, but there's a beautiful little hotel called the Hotel Relais Christine, and it's an old convent, and I've always loved it. And it's a quiet little spot in a one-way street, and I just love that little area. I don't know whether it's because of the memories.
Sure.
But I always love being over there. Now, I was just talking to Mimi before. She lives in the 16th in Passy. And my youngest child did her last 2 years over in Passy at the international school there. And that's a beautiful village atmosphere, and I now absolutely adore that. And you hardly ever see a tourist there.
It's quiet there.
Very quiet.
But I think there's a thing, like a lot of Paris, they say it's like 500 villages here.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
I do too.
Really do.
And I love getting in and getting to know a village.
Yeah. Me too.
There's something really magical about that, I think.
But I think on that note, I'll let you get to your own village in the countryside.
Okay.
Because I know you got to run. But thank you so much for being on my show.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank
you for having me.
I look forward to seeing you under the linden trees one day in
You
Normandy.
will come and bring your bride, and we'll organise a weekend when you get back from Sweden.
Yes, I can't wait. Thank you very much. Well, there you have it. What a lovely chat with Jane Webster. If you want to check out her chateau, like I said, the website is thefrenchtable.com.au, but you can also check her out on Instagram, Jane Webster, The French Table. She's very active there, doing a lot of live videos and so on. But really fun to talk to her. Maybe I'll go and visit one day. Watch this space. But as I said at the beginning, a little bit of news from Paris. Things are getting back to normal in the City of Light, or the City of Lights. You know, no matter which one I say, I get emails from people saying that I've said it wrong. As far as I'm concerned, both make sense. So I'm going to continue interchanging. No need to email me about it. But speaking of emails and reviews, I'll read one or two out. Sometimes I duck into the reviews of the podcast that people leave. And, here's one of them that I quite liked. It's from Scott H86 Liverpool. Gosh, that sounds more like a password, Scott. You got to be careful. Now everyone knows. He writes, extremely enjoyable, 5 stars. If you, like me, are obsessed with Paris, or even if you're just a fan of witty humour, then consider giving the Eiffel Tower a follow and a listen. Oliver's engaging, informative, and can tell a good story. And while you're at it, and you're following his podcast, why don't you follow his social media, such as Facebook and Instagram, where he regularly makes me jealous that I'm not in Paris by sharing his excellent pictures and Instagram stories. If you want to go a step further, as I did, then give his book, Paris on Air, a read and support him on Patreon for even more Paris content. Wow, Scott H6 Liverpool. That is such a kind thing to say and do. Thanks for really jumping on and, going all in there. I really appreciate that. And they're the kind of things I say at the end of the episode, so I don't really need to say it. But Scott is exactly right. That is the way to get the most out of this world, is to check out the book and to check out the Patreon content. Let's have a look at one more. This one's from Emma Mint. And she writes, "This podcast makes me happy." That's lovely. 5 stars. "Oliver, like I told you before on Instagram, through your podcast, you make me rediscover Paris, where I've been living for the past 10 years. Wow, that's cool to think. Looking forward to a new episode every week. A big plus is your lovely wife, Lena, in brackets, lovely Lena, with whom you have a great energy." Oh, thanks, Emma. "Keep the episodes coming. I'm sure you have big things waiting for you in the future. Bonne journée, Emma." Ending on the French there. After 10 years in France, I suppose that makes sense. But what a treat to help you rediscover the city that you no doubt love as much as I do. Thanks for the kind review. And the shout out to my lovely wife as well. That'll do for today, But it does help when you guys write these lovely comments. Not only to give me something to read, but to let other people who are hovering around on the podcast pages of their phone deciding whether to listen or not, it helps convince them, I think. So thanks for the reviews. Thanks to everyone for listening. I'm going to leave it at that for this week. In the coming weeks, maybe even next week, I've got a really cool episode with Agnès. I had to really learn how to pronounce that name in French. Agnès Poirier, who wrote a book called Notre Dame, The Soul of France. I did a great interview with her, sitting on a terrace of the Saint-Régy Cafe looking over the Notre Dame. She's just written this cool book, and we talked all about that cathedral and the fire and everything else. That'll be coming up very soon. Thanks for listening. I hope to see you next week as well. But bonne journée, au revoir, and merci beaucoup. Talk to you next time.